This week we're going to consider some of the things that underpin our ideas about learning, the learning theories. We can define learning as one of the things that you can see on this slide. That might include knowledge, it might include skills, it might include understanding, or it might mean a change in the person concerned. So here are some first principles. Learning is a lifelong process. It starts in the womb and continues until we die. We can think of learning as informal, those things that take place outside of a place of education, or formal, those things that take place inside. But even that itself is quite a crude definition. Secondly, learning is something that all organisms go through. They adapt and survive in order to exist in their environment. So what is learning? Two things. First of all, it's a process by which those things like knowledge, skills, understanding, change take place. And then also it's the product of those things. So the acquisition of knowledge, of skills, of understanding, becoming the changed person. Learning involves a number of things. It involves the individual, the interaction between brain and body. As we've seen in previous sessions, learning growth is not just about the cognitive, but about the physical, the psychological, the moral, the emotional, and the social. Also, learning is, on the whole, for most people, a social activity. It may involve somebody else, a group, an organisation, a community, or the whole of society. Learning must take place somewhere, either in an informal or a formal setting. And learning is not something which is instantaneous, at least not yet. So, learning is about three core ideas. It's learning about ideas and concepts, it's learning about behaviours and skills, and it's learning about attitudes and values. Again, we can see the cognitive, social, moral, emotional and psychological aspects. We're going to talk about learning theory, and on this slide you can see some key points about what a theory is. Theories will develop and change over time, and sometimes be completely radicalized, the idea of a paradigm shift as Kuhn talks about. But mostly our theories are ones that we've adapted and kept and can see operating in different environments. Do not think of the learning theories as things which will subsume or overtake each other, but more a progressive process. So, how do people learn? The easy answer is, it's hard to know. The more complex answer is that there are a number of theories which give us ideas around which we're constructing or making meaning. Originally these came from psychologists, but over time they've been added to and developed by the other people you can see on this list. The most recent group, the neuroscientists, are giving us insights into how the brain actually works. We're going to think of three main broad domains of these theories. The first of these is behaviourist, the second cognitivist, and the third constructivist. We touched upon all of these in the introductory lecture way back in week 1. And you can see here the quote from John Dewey about the educational process having those two sides, the psychological and the sociological. So let's go back into history a little tiny bit, and first of all consider two ideas about learning from the ancient world. Plato argued that learning was something that took place within ourselves, that learning does not just happen, it must be an interaction between our own senses and the world which we sensate. However, that knowledge is innate and needs to be drawn out. There are truths out there that we need to consider. His analogy or allegory of this was the idea of the cave. The truth is being performed in an absolute sense, but behind us, and being projected onto our consciousness as shadows on the cave wall. We can never know the absolute nature of truth, only the illustrations or the shadows that truth casts on the wall. Aristotle argued that we need to seek out truth, seek out ideas from the natural world, that we must be an empiricist, look for facts to gather data from the world around us. John Locke pulled these ideas into a more coherent form when he talked about people being tabula rasa or blank slates. The idea being then that we must develop or others must develop for us the key ideas and key knowledge of the world. This is a very passive experience for the learner, but there is some engagement with the world outside of themselves. So, why is it important to have a theory of learning for us as educators? Surely just knowing practice is enough. Well, no. We need to have a key idea about how we think people are learning. If we think people are learning independently, then in a realistic sense, then that will give us a very different way of teaching to if we think that learning is being constructed in the mind of the learner. Alongside of this, it will depend whether we feel the job of education is to incrementally add to the tabula rasa, the blank slate of the pupil, or whether it's to aid the person to construct meaning. Of course, for both of these, it does not have to be dichotomous. We can blend these into our own mixed theory or epistemology of learning. So we need to think about how our beliefs about knowledge, our beliefs about learning, and our strategies practice come together to make us into the teacher that we want to be. Again, something we considered a few weeks ago. As you go through the rest of the materials in this section, consider how learning would look in the classroom if it were viewed as a Platonist, an Aristotelian, or a Lockean, and how learning would take place if you viewed it through a behaviourist, cognitivist, or constructivist viewpoint, or from a socio-cultural aspect. Learning as it is then, currently in our classrooms, depends and draws on all of these theories. Things may change in the future, but would you want a classroom where knowledge could be just inputted directly into the brains of the individual? Is this desirable or not desirable?